The first Antimatter torpedo struck the cargo hauler's starboard quarter at 1,847 hours, and Captain Maria Chen watched her life flash before her eyes for exactly 2 seconds before the damage reports started flooding in. Hull breach sections 12 through 15. We've got explosive decompression on decks 3 and 4. The voice of her first officer, James Park, crackled over the comm with a kind of controlled panic that came from a decade of hauling freight through the ascent of known space. Maria's hands moved across her command console with practiced efficiency, her mind already 3 steps ahead. The Indomitable, though most folks called her the Rust Bucket, and not entirely without reason, shuddered beneath her feet like a wounded animal. The lights flickered, something exploded deep in the ship's guts, and she felt it through the deck plating. Seal those sections. Everyone into suits. Engineering, I need status on the reactor. She kept her voice level, professional, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Through the viewport, she could see the sleek, predatory shape of the Kalvanex warship wheeling around for another pass, its hull gleaming like polished obsidian against the stars. The second torpedo hit before they'd even finished responding to the first. This one took them amidships, and the impact threw Maria against her restraints hard enough to bruise. Alarms screamed their warnings. The artificial gravity stuttered, leaving her stomach in her throat for 3 terrible seconds before it caught again. Warning klaxons layered over each other in a cacophony of imminent disaster. Engineering to bridge. The voice of Chief Engineer Sarah Okonkwo cut through the chaos, and Maria had never been so glad to hear that Lagos accent in her life. Captain, we just took a direct hit to the secondary power distribution hub. I've got fires on 3 levels, the port coolant system is compromised, and according to these readings, we should be dead. Noted, Chief. Are we dead? Give me a minute to check. There was a pause, filled with the sound of shouting and the hiss of emergency foam suppressors. No ma'am, still here, reactors holding somehow, but we've lost primary power to sections 18 through 23. Commander Zexthal of the Kalvanex Hegemony watched the primitive human vessel through his tactical display and felt a ripple of irritation disturb his normally smooth thought processes. The ship should not still be there. By all rights, by all logic and mathematics, the Indomitable, what a presumptuous name, should have been reduced to its component atoms 3 minutes ago. He had watched the targeting solutions himself. Perfect hits, antimatter warheads with yields sufficient to crack a heavy cruiser's shields. And yet the human ship persisted, bleeding atmosphere and coolant, tumbling slightly off its axis, but still fundamentally intact. Tactical Officer Venzik. Zexthal's voice carried the harmonics of command, resonating through the bridge of the righteous punishment. Explain to me how that vessel continues to exist. Venzik, a young officer recently promoted from the academy, manipulated his console with all 4 of his primary manipulator appendages, his sensor stalks quivering with confusion. Commander, either targeting was flawless. Direct impacts confirmed. Yield calculations were within acceptable parameters. The human ship should have been destroyed, and yet it was not. Zexthal moved closer to the tactical display, studying the battered human craft with something approaching curiosity now, rather than mere irritation. The ship was old, that much was obvious even from this distance. Its hull bore the scars of decades of use, repairs layered upon repairs, sections that didn't quite match, as if it had been assembled from spare parts and determination. The humans called it a cargo hauler, and indeed it had all the elegance of a cargo container with engines bolted to one end. But it was still there, still broadcasting its distress beacon, still showing power signatures from its reactor. Sensors indicate the hull is constructed from some form of iron-carbon alloy, Venzik reported, his tone puzzled. Primitive, but the density readings are unusual. Commander, I believe they've used excessive thickness, far more than necessary for structural integrity under normal operational parameters. How excessive? Preliminary scans suggest their hull plating is 3 to 4 times thicker than standard for a vessel of this class and function. Venzit parsed. It appears to be wasteful, inefficient. The additional mass would significantly reduce their maximum velocity and increase fuel consumption. Zexel considered this. The Kalvanex had mastered the art of efficiency centuries ago. Their ships were marvels of engineering. Every gram accounted for, every system optimized to its theoretical maximum. They built for performance, for excellence, for perfection. The humans, it seemed, built for something else entirely. Fire again, Zexel ordered. Same yield. Target their engineering section. Let us see how many times they can defy mathematics. Inside the Indomitable, Maria was having a very similar conversation with mathematics, and mathematics was losing. Captain, we can't take another hit like that. Park was checking casualty reports, his face grim. We've got 17 crew in medical, 3 dead, and if they punch through to the reactor, I'm aware, Commander. Maria pulled up a nav chart, calculating distances, trajectories, possibilities. They were 4 hours from the nearest jump point, and the Kalvanex ship could run circles around them. The Indomitable had been designed for endurance, not speed. She could carry cargo across half the galaxy, could run for months on a single tank of fuel, could shrug off micrometeorite impacts and solar radiation and all the casual brutality of deep space. But she was not a warship. She had never been meant to fight. Why are they doing this? Park asked, the question everyone was thinking. We're not military. We're not even armed. Just a cargo hauler in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maria knew the answer, though it brought her no comfort. 3 weeks ago, the Kalvanex had declared the Outer Rim a restricted zone, claiming some ancient territorial right that predated human expansion into this sector. The Confederacy had filed protests. Diplomats had made speeches. And freighter captains like Maria had continued to haul cargo because bills needed to be paid and treaties took time. The Kalvanex, it seemed, had decided to expedite the process. Evasive patent delta, she ordered. Get us as much lateral drift as you can. And someone tell me we have something we can use as a weapon. Captain, it was young Tommy Reeves at the sensor station, his voice cracking slightly. Kid was barely 20, fresh off some nowhere colony, and this was probably his first real emergency. They're charging weapons again. I see it. Chief, I need everything you can give me. Sarah's voice came back, breathless and strained. I'm pulling power from life support in the sealed sections, routing it to the engines. But Maria, this boat was built to haul mining equipment, not dodge warships. We're not fast enough. Then make us lucky enough. The third torpedo hit took off the entire port side sensor array and collapsed the forward observation deck. The Indomitable rang like a bell, and Maria tasted blood where she'd bitten her tongue. More alarms. More damage reports. The lights in the bridge dimmed to emergency red, but they were still there, still alive, still moving. Zexel stood perfectly still, his 3 hearts beating in an uneven pattern that would have alarmed his physician. The human ship was barely recognizable now. Whole sections were gone, vented to space. Debris trailed behind it like a comet's tail. Power fluctuations rippled across its hull, and yet its engines still burned. Its reactor still hummed. It continued to limp toward the jump point with the determination of a wounded animal seeking its den. Commander, Venzic's voice held a note of something that might have been respect, if such a thing were possible regarding primitives. I am detecting extensive internal compartmentalization. The ship appears to be divided into dozens of isolated sections, each with independent life support, power distribution, and structural integrity fields. When we breach the hull, we are destroying individual compartments, but the damage does not cascade. Show me. The tactical display shifted, showing a cutaway view of the human ship's internal structure. Zextel studied it, his mind working through the implications. It was like looking at a ship made of ships, each section capable of functioning independently. Bulkheads that could seal in microseconds, redundant power lines running through protected conduits, backup systems for the backup systems. It was primitive, yes, inelegant, but it was also effective. They have built a ship that is designed to be damaged, he said slowly, understanding Dorning. Not to avoid damage, to survive it, to continue functioning even after catastrophic hull breaches. Yes, Commander. Venzit pulled up more data. I am also detecting what appear to be repair drones throughout the ship. They are already at work on some of the damaged sections, sealing breaches, rerouting power. Zextel watched the drones at work, crude, simple machines by Kalvanex standards, but effective. They moved through the wreckage like insects, patching holes, welding plates, restoring function. The ship was healing itself, slowly but surely. This is a cargo hauler, he asked. According to their registry, yes, Commander. The Indomitable, out of New Terror, civilian designation, no military affiliation. If this was what the humans built to carry cargo, what did their warships look like? The question disturbed Zexel more than he wanted to admit. Aboard the Indomitable, Sarah Okonkwo was performing miracles with nothing but spare parts and profanity. She'd been a naval engineer once, back before the scars and the nightmares and the medical discharge. Now she kept mining equipment running, patched holes in cargo haulers, and tried very hard not to think about the war. The war, it seemed, had found her anyway. Boss, the port-side coolant system is shot to hell. Her assistant, Marcus Chen, no relation to the captain, shouted over the sound of escaping steam. We're running hot on the reactor. Then dump the emergency reserves into the primary loop and pray. Sarah was elbow-deep in a power junction, rerouting circuits that had never been meant to connect. Her hands moved with the certainty of someone who had spent 20 years learning every inch of ships like this one. And get those drones on the hull breach in Section 14. I want it patched before we lose the whole compartment. The beauty of ships like the Indomitable, old freighters, built back when humanity was first pushing into deep space, was that they had been designed by people who understood that space was trying to kill you every second of every day. They had built redundancy into redundancy, had over-engineered every system, had assumed that everything would break eventually and planned accordingly. The military had called it wasteful, inefficient. They built sleek warships with optimal performance characteristics, stripping out every unnecessary gram to maximize speed and firepower. Sarah had watched 3 of those warships die at the Battle of Kepler Station, torn apart by a single lucky hit that cascaded through their elegant, efficient systems. She'd survived because she'd been on an old cargo hauler just like this one, a ship that had taken a dozen direct hits and kept flying. Humans, she'd learned, didn't build the best ships. They built the ships that refused to die. How bad is it? Maria asked over the comm. On a scale of 1 to fucked, we're hovering around thoroughly fucked, but still breathing. Sarah yanked a power coupling free and slammed in its replacement. I've got the reactor stable for now, but we've lost half our maneuvering thrusters and the primary drive is running at 60%. We're not going to outrun them, Captain. Don't need to outrun them. Just need to last long enough to reach the jump point. 3.5 hours at current speed. Then we last 3.5 hours. Sarah barked out a laugh despite everything. You always were an optimist, Captain. The fourth torpedo didn't come. Maria watched the Kalvanex wash up on her tactical display, waiting for the weapon's signature that would herald another impact. But the sleek alien craft simply paced them, matching their velocity, maintaining a distance of approximately 10,000 kilometers. Why aren't they firing? Park wondered aloud. Tommy Reeves provided the answer, his voice uncertain. Captain, I'm picking up communications traffic between the Kalvanex ship and what appears to be a command vessel further out system. There, I think they're requesting instructions. Maria felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Can you translate? Working on it. The computer's pulling from the diplomatic database. Tommy worked his console, fragments of alien speech filtering through the bridge speakers, overlaid with the computer's halting translation. They're reporting unsuccessful termination of human vessel, requesting authorization for enhanced measures. Enhanced measures. Park's voice was flat. What the hell do they think they've been using? Harsh language. Maria pulled up everything she knew about the Kalvanex, which wasn't much. They were a proud species, old and established, with territory spanning 30 systems. They'd made first contact with humanity 40 years ago, and the relationship had been complicated. The Kalvanex saw themselves as a civilizing force in the galaxy, bringing order and proper hierarchy to the chaos of younger species. Humanity, with its messy democracy and casual disregard for proper protocol, had not impressed them. But they'd maintained peace, mostly through the simple expedient of avoiding each other. Until now. Captain, Tommy said urgently. I'm picking up multiple new contacts jumping in system. Kalvanex designation. At least 6 ships, maybe more. Maria closed her eyes for just a moment, allowing herself that brief respite before she opened them and faced the truth. They weren't going to make it to the jump point. The math was simple and brutal, but she'd be damned if she'd make it easy for them. All hands. This is the captain. She keyed the ship-wide comm, knowing her words were being recorded, knowing that if when they died here, this would be the last anyone heard from the Indomitable. We're in a tough spot. Not going to lie to you. We've got a Kalvanex battle group moving in, and our chances of making it out of this are somewhere between slim and none. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But I want you to know something. Every one of you signed onto this ship knowing the risks, knowing that space doesn't give a damn about us, knowing that sometimes the galaxy is a harsh and unforgiving place, and you signed on anyway because that's what humans do. We don't quit. We don't surrender. We build ships like this one, ships that can take a beating and keep going because we understand that survival isn't about being the fastest or the smartest or the strongest. It's about refusing to give up, even when the universe itself is trying to kill you. Through the viewport, she could see the Kalvanex reinforcements arriving, their sleek hulls reflecting starlight. Beautiful ships, perfect ships, ships that had never known the indignity of limping home with half their systems offline, held together by prayer and duct tape and the sheer stubborn refusal to acknowledge defeat. We're going to keep flying, Maria continued. We're going to keep fighting for every second, every meter. Not because we think we'll win, but because that's who we are. And maybe, just maybe, we'll last long enough for someone to notice, for someone to remember, for someone to say they went down swinging. Those crazy bastards. They never stopped trying. She cut the comm and turned to her crew. Park was watching her with something like pride. Tommy was wiping his eyes. At the engineering station, someone was quietly singing an old Earth song, something about going down to the sea in ships. All right, Maria said softly. Let's show them what humanity looks like. Commander Zextel watched the arrival of Fleet Commander Daxmer's battle group with mixed feelings. Part of him was relieved this had become a matter of hegemony honor, and honor demanded the human ship's destruction. But another part, a smaller part that he kept carefully hidden, felt something he could not quite name. Regret, perhaps, or respect. Commander Zextel, Daxmer's voice resonated through the communications channel, carrying the weight of absolute authority. Your report indicates a single human cargo vessel has withstood multiple antimatter strikes. This is concerning. Yes, Fleet Commander. The vessel demonstrates unusual resilience. Its construction is primitive but effective. Multiple redundant systems, excessive structural reinforcement. I do not require excuses, Commander. I require results. Daxmer's tone carried an edge of disapproval that made Zextel's sensor storks quiver involuntarily. The hegemony has declared this sector closed to human traffic. We will enforce this declaration decisively. Through his displays, Zextel watched as the battle group deployed into attack formation. 6 heavy cruisers, each mounting enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble, against a single cargo hauler that was barely holding together. It seemed excessive. Fleet Commander Zextel found himself speaking before he had consciously decided to. Perhaps we should consider. We will consider nothing but our duty, Commander. Daxmer cut him off. The humans must learn their place. They are newcomers to this region of space, barely a century removed from their homeworld, and yet they presume to ignore our territorial claims. We will teach them respect. Zextel said nothing. He had learned, over his years of service, when to argue and when to simply obey. This was a time for obedience, even if something in his mind whispered that this was a mistake. Venzik appeared at his side, his sensor storks oriented toward the tactical display. Commander, the human ship is still transmitting. Not just their distress beacon, they are broadcasting their situation to the wider network. Multiple human colonies and stations are receiving their transmissions. They wish their deaths to be witnessed, Zextel said. It was a gesture he understood, even respected. To die with honor, to ensure that one's sacrifice was remembered. These were values the Kalvanex held dear. Perhaps the humans were not so different after all. Fleet Commander Daxmer orders all vessels to open fire on his mark, Venzik reported. Simultaneous strike. Maximum yield. Zextel watched the human ship on his display. It was limping now, trailing debris, systems failing one by one. But it was still moving, still fighting for every second of existence. Helm, he said quietly. Full power to senses. I want complete data on the human vessel's destruction. Combat logs, full spectrum analysis, everything. Venzik looked at him curiously. Commander, if we are to destroy them, Zextel said, we should at least do them the honor of understanding how they survived so long. The humans have demonstrated unexpected capabilities. We would be fools not to learn from them. The young tactical officer considered this, then nodded. Yes, Commander. Aboard the Indomitable, Sarah had just succeeded in restoring power to the secondary thrusters when Tommy's voice came over the general comm, young and frightened and trying very hard not to show it. Multiple targeting locks detected. 6 vessels charging weapons. Captain, they're all targeting us simultaneously. In the bridge, Maria felt a strange calm settle over her. This was it, then. The end of the road. She'd known it was coming, had made her peace with it, but there was still a part of her that had hoped for a miracle. Humanity had always been good at miracles. Chief, she said into her comm, thank you for everything. You kept us alive a lot longer than we had any right to be. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Not long enough, apparently. Long enough to matter. There was a pause, filled with the sound of alarms and the hiss of escaping atmosphere and the quiet prayers of her crew. Then Sarah's voice again. Softer, Captain. Maria, it's been an honor. The honor was mine, Sarah. Maria looked around her bridge, at the faces of her crew. Park, who had served with her for 8 years, through the good runs and the bad. Tommy, who was too young to die but would die anyway, because the universe didn't care about fair. The others, all of them, people who had trusted her to bring them home safely. She had failed them, and yet, looking at their faces, she saw no accusation, only determination, only the same stubborn human refusal to go quietly into the dark. 30 seconds to weapons fire, Tommy reported. His voice was steady now. He'd found his courage. They all had. Maria reached out and keyed the all-hands comm one last time. This is the captain. I want you all to know that I'm proud of you. Proud to have served with you. Proud to have called you my crew. We did our jobs. We did them well. And we never gave up. That's going to have to be enough. She paused, then added a "see you on the other side." The weapon's signature bloom on the tactical display. 6 ships firing in perfect synchronization. Antimatter torpedoes moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Their yields calculated to reduce the Indomitable to subatomic particles. Maria closed her eyes. The torpedoes never reached their target. The jump point erupted with multiple overlapping distortions as 14 human vessels dropped out of FTL, their emergence so precisely timed that they arrived in a perfect defensive formation around the Indomitable. Not cargo haulers this time, not civilian ships. These were warships, human space navy destroyers and frigates. Their hulls painted in the blue and white of the Confederacy, their weapons already hot, their shields blazing. And at their head, massive and terrible, was the CNS Defiance, a heavy cruiser that had earned its name during the colony wars and never looked back. "Attention, Kalvanex vessels," a voice boomed across all channels, deep and authoritative and absolutely unafraid. "This is Admiral Catherine Park, commanding officer of the 3rd Fleet. You are hereby ordered to cease fire immediately. The vessel you are targeting is a civilian cargo hauler operating in neutral space under the protection of the Human Confederacy. Your attack constitutes an act of war." Maria's eyes snapped open. She stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Kate," she whispered. "Well," Park said from beside her, a grin spreading across his face. "This just got interesting." The Defiance positioned itself directly between the Indomitable and the Kalvanex battle group, and suddenly those 6 cruisers didn't seem quite so overwhelming. The human warship was larger, its armaments more extensive, and it radiated the kind of quiet menace that came from knowing it could win this fight. Behind it, the other human ships formed up, their weapons locked on the Kalvanex vessels. "Waiting, all Kalvanex ships," Admiral Park continued, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had fought in more battles than most people could imagine. "Lower your weapons. Power down your firing solutions. Do it now, or I will interpret your continued hostile posture as confirmation of aggressive intent, and I will respond accordingly." There was a long, terrible silence. Then, slowly, the Kalvanex weapon signatures began to fade. Fleet Commander Daxmer stared at his tactical display in a state that could only be described as profound shock. The human warships had appeared without warning, their FTL signatures somehow evading his long-range sensors until the moment of emergence. Their formation was perfect, their positioning was ideal, and their timing suggested either incredible luck or more disturbingly that they had been nearby and waiting. How, he demanded of his sensor officer. How did they arrive so quickly? Unknown, Fleet Commander. Their jump was too precise, too well coordinated. They would have needed advance knowledge of the exact situation, the exact coordinates, The officer trailed off, understanding Dorning. The cargo hauler. It was broadcasting, not just distress signals. Full combat telemetry, precision data, tactical analysis. Daxmer felt his 3 hearts sink in realization. The human cargo ship hadn't been transmitting in hope of rescue. It had been transmitting to coordinate a response. Every second it survived, every moment it continued to broadcast, it had been buying time, drawing the Kalvanex attention, leading them deeper into what was now clearly a trap. They used their own civilian vessel as bait, he said softly. No, Fleet Commander. It was Zexthal's voice, coming over the command channel. I do not believe the human navy planned this as a trap. I believe they were responding to a genuine distress call, and they pushed their vessels to the limit to arrive in time. The timing was not calculated, it was desperate. Daxmer considered this. It made the humans' achievement even more impressive, and therefore even more disturbing. Fleet Commander, his communications officer reported. The human admiral is demanding a response. Her vessels maintain weapons lock. Daxmer studied the tactical situation with the cold logic of a military strategist. His battle group was powerful, yes. In a straight fight against the human fleet, the outcome would be uncertain, but likely in the hegemony's favor. But they were deep in neutral space, attacking civilian vessels, and now facing what was clearly a prepared military response. The political ramifications would be catastrophic, the strategic implications worse. And though he hated to admit it, he was not entirely certain they would win. The human warships looked as battered and overbuilt as their cargo hauler, all thick armor and redundant systems. If they were as difficult to kill as that damned freight power-down weapons, he ordered, maintain defensive posture but do not fire. Fleet Commander, his tactical officer sounded shocked. We came to enforce territorial claims, not to start a war. Not today. Daxmer straightened in his command chair, forcing confidence he did not entirely feel. Helm, prepare for withdrawal. Communications. Inform the human admiral that we are standing down pending diplomatic resolution of territorial disputes. He watched the human warships on his display, noting their positioning, their readiness, the way they moved with a kind of precision that spoke of extensive training and combat experience. The Kalvanex had dismissed humanity as newcomers, primitives, species barely worth noticing. But primitives did not build ships that could shrug off antimatter strikes. Primitives did not coordinate fleet responses across light years of space. Primitives did not stare down a superior force with such absolute confidence. Perhaps, Daxmer thought, they had been mistaken. The human admiral's voice came back, measured and professional. Withdrawal acknowledged. Fleet Commander, we will escort you to the edge of the sector to ensure no further misunderstandings occur. The Indomitable will proceed under our protection to the nearest repair facility. It was not a request, and Daxmer, for all his pride, was not fool enough to escalate. Greed, he said simply. As the Kalvanex battle group began its retreat, Zextal found himself watching the human cargo hauler one last time. It was still there, still limping along, half its hull breached, systems failing, but alive. Impossibly, stubbornly alive. Beside him, Venzek was updating his combat analysis, and Zextal could see the conclusion forming even before the young officer spoke it aloud. Commander, Venzek said slowly, I have been reviewing our engagement with a human vessel, computing the statistical probability of its survival, and by any reasonable calculation, it should have been destroyed with the first strike. Certainly with the second. The fact that it survived 3 direct hits with antimatter warheads is it defies conventional military doctrine. Their ship's construction philosophy is fundamentally different from ours, where we optimize for efficiency and performance. They optimize for durability and redundancy. Every system has backups. Every backup has backups. The entire vessel is designed not to perform optimally, but to continue functioning under catastrophic damage. Zexel nodded. He had reached the same conclusion. What are the implications? If their civilian vessels are this difficult to destroy, Venzik said quietly, their warships must be proportionally more formidable. We targeted what we believed to be a soft target, an easy kill. It took us 3 direct hits, and the ship survived long enough for reinforcements to arrive. A human warship, designed for combat rather than cargo. He didn't need to finish the thought. Zextel looked at the retreating human fleet, at the damaged cargo hauler limping along in their midst, and felt the first stirrings of something he had not expected to feel toward humanity. Not fear, precisely, but a profound reassessment of assumptions long held. The humans had entered the galactic stage barely a century ago, young and brash and seemingly primitive. The established powers, the Kalvanex included, had viewed them as minor players, not worthy of serious consideration. Today that had changed. Aboard the Indomitable, Maria was trying to process the fact that she was still alive when the comm chimed with an incoming call from the Defiance. She accepted it, and Admiral Catherine Park's face filled the screen, older now, rare, but with the same sharp eyes Maria remembered from their days at the Academy. "Kate," Maria said, her voice rough with emotion. "I don't how did you got your distress beacon 40 minutes ago," Kate replied. "Along with full combat telemetry from your encounter. I was conducting exercises 2 systems over with the 3rd Fleet. Jumped immediately." She paused, her expression softening. "Hell of a thing you did, Maria. 3 direct hits. 3. I read the logs. You shouldn't have survived the first one. Tell that to Sarah. She's the one who held us together." "I intend to. I'm putting her up for a commendation." "You too." Kate's eyes hardened. "And I'm also going to have some very pointed conversations with Confederacy Command about what the hell the Kalvanex think they're doing attacking civilian vessels in neutral space." Maria felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her now that the immediate danger had passed. They said they'd declared the sector closed to human traffic, which is their right if it were actually their territory. Which it isn't. This is neutral space, protected by treaty. Kate shook her head. They got aggressive because they thought they could intimidate us. Thought we'd back down. Thought wrong. Through the viewport, Maria could see the human fleet maintaining formation around her battered ship. Protection, defense, the promise that humanity did not abandon its own. "How long until we reach the repair station?" she asked. 8 hours at your current speed. We'll stay with you the whole way. Kate smiled slightly. "That ship of yours is one tough bitch, Maria. I've seen combat cruisers fold under less damage." "What did you call her?" "Indomitable," Maria said, "though most folks call her the Rust Bucket." "Not anymore, they won't." Kate's smile widened. "After today, every cargo hauler captain in the fleet is going to want to know what kind of ship could survive 3 antimatter strikes. You just became a legend, whether you like it or not." Maria looked around her shattered bridge, at her exhausted crew, at the damage reports still scrolling across her screens. "We just did our jobs, Kate. Tried to survive. That's all." "That's all." Kate laughed. "Maria, you held out against a Kalvanex warship for 40 minutes with nothing but a cargo hauler and sheer stubbornness. You bought time for us to arrive. You kept your crew alive against impossible odds. That's not just doing your job. That's heroism. Maria didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired and scared and grateful to still be breathing. But she understood what Kate was saying. The Indomitable had become a symbol now, whether Maria liked it or not. A symbol of human resilience, of the refusal to surrender, of the stubborn, bloody-minded determination that had carried humanity from one small blue planet to the stars themselves. Get some rest, Kate said gently. We've got you. You're safe now. The comm clicked off, and Maria slumped in her chair, the adrenaline finally draining away. Around her, the bridge crew was slowly standing down from combat stations, the tense silence giving way to nervous laughter and relieved chatter. Park came over and squeezed her shoulder. Hell of a speech, Captain. Thought we were dead, Maria admitted. We were. Should have been. Park grinned. Guess the universe wasn't ready for us yet. Down in engineering, Sarah was sitting against a bulkhead, too tired to move, covered in grease and burn ointment, and the distinctive smell of fried circuits. Marcus was beside her, equally exhausted, equally filthy. We lived, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. We lived, Sarah agreed. 3 antimatter strikes. 3, I know. That's impossible, I know. Marcus started laughing, a slightly hysterical edge to it. This ship, this fucking ship, it's held together with duct tape and prayer and spite, and it just survived getting hit by weapons that could crack a planet. Sarah patted the bulkhead beside her affectionately. She's a good ship. People don't appreciate the old designs anymore. Everyone wants the new hotness, the optimized systems, the efficiency ratings. But the old ships, the ones built back when we didn't know what we were doing and overcompensated by building everything 3 times stronger than it needed to be, those ships last. Is that what this was? Over-engineering? More like paranoid engineering. Sarah closed her eyes. The people who designed ships like this, they remembered what it was like when humanity was new to space. When everything could kill you and usually tried, they built ships that could keep going even when everything went wrong. Because space is hostile, and equipment fails, and if you don't build in redundancy, people die. Well, it saved our asses today. Yes, Sarah said softly. Yes, it did. Around them, her repair drones continued their work, patching holes, sealing breaches, restoring systems one by one. The ship was healing, slowly, painfully, but healing, just like them. The journey to the repair station took 8 hours, and word of the Indomitable's survival spread through human space like wildfire. By the time they limped into dock, there were news crews waiting, reporters shouting questions, officials demanding interviews. Maria ignored all of them. She waited until her entire crew had disembarked safely, until the wounded were in medical care and the dead were being prepared for transport home. Only then did she allow herself to look back at her ship. The Indomitable looked like hell. Whole sections were missing. The hull was scorched and pitted. Emergency patches covered dozens of breaches. By all rights, by every rule of engineering and physics, the ship should have been scrapped. But it was still there, still intact, still ready to fly again once the repairs were complete. She's beautiful, a voice said behind her, and Maria turned to find Admiral Park standing there in full dress uniform, looking decidedly out of place in the grimy dock. She's a mess, Maria corrected. Same thing in the right light. Kate moved to stand beside her, studying the damaged vessel. I've been getting reports from our intelligence division. The Kalvanex are reassessing their position on humanity. Seems our primitive ship made an impression. Just wanted to survive, Maria said. And that's exactly what's got them worried. Kate pulled up a data pad showing intercepted Kalvanex communications. They're analyzing every aspect of the engagement: ship construction, damage control procedures, fleet response times. They went into this thinking they were dealing with upstarts who'd fold at the first sign of real force. Instead, they found a cargo hauler that could shrug off Antimatter strikes and a battle group that could jump across half a sector in under an hour. Maria scanned the reports, seeing her ship's survival through alien eyes. To the Kalvanex, it must have seemed impossible, illogical. Their entire military doctrine was based on precision strikes, on destroying targets efficiently with minimal expenditure of resources. Humanity's approach was different. They built ships that could take damage, that could keep functioning when half their systems were offline, that could limp home on a prayer and spite, not because it was efficient, because it kept people alive. What happens now? Marauder asked diplomatically. Long, boring negotiations about territorial boundaries and neutral space rights. The Kalvanex will posture and make demands, will hold firm, eventually will reach some kind of agreement. Kate smiled, but militarily, you just taught them a lesson they won't forget. That humanity doesn't quit, that we build things to last, that you can knock us down, but we'll just keep getting back up. She gestured to the Indomitable. That ship is going to be studied at our Naval Academy. Engineers are already requesting detailed schematics. We're going to learn from this, improve our designs, incorporate the lessons into our next generation of vessels. Your rust bucket just changed our entire approach to ship construction. Maria felt a surge of pride, unexpected and fierce. Her ship, her crew, they'd done something that mattered. When will she be ready to fly? Marauder asked. 4 weeks minimum, maybe 6. Kate studied her. You're not thinking of taking her back out. She's my ship, my responsibility. Maria, you almost died. Your entire crew almost died. No one would blame you for retiring, taking a safe job planet-side. Kate. Maria cut her off gently. This is what I do. This is who I am. And that ship out there, she pointed to the Indomitable. She saved our lives today, kept us alive through the impossible. I'm not abandoning her just because things got rough. Kate studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I figured you'd say that. Which is why I pulled some strings to make sure you got the best repair crew in the fleet. They'll have her better than new. Thank you, Kate replied, for showing the galaxy what humanity is made of, for not giving up, for proving that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. They stood together in silence, watching as the repair crews began their work on the battered ship. Around them, the dock buzzed with activity, but Maria barely noticed. All her attention was on the Indomitable, her ship, still standing despite everything the universe had thrown at it. She thought about the Kalvanex, reassessing their assumptions about humanity. Thought about the reports that would circulate through the galactic community. Thought about the message that had been sent. Clear and unmistakable: humanity could not be easily dismissed, could not be intimidated, could not be counted out, no matter how bad things looked, because humans built ships like the Indomitable, ships that refused to die, ships that embodied everything humanity stood for: resilience, determination, the absolute refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. 3 weeks later, Commander Zextel stood in a briefing room on the Kalvanex homeworld, presenting his analysis of the engagement to the High Command. His sensor storks quivered nervously as he displayed the data, knowing that his conclusions would not be well received. The human vessel's survival, he explained, was not a matter of luck or chance. It was a direct result of their construction philosophy. Where we build for optimal performance, they build for operational continuity under catastrophic damage. Every system is redundant. Every compartment is independently sealable. The entire vessel is designed with the assumption that it will be damaged, and that it must continue functioning despite that damage. High Commander Calvin, ancient and intimidating even by Kalvanex standards, leaned forward. You are saying their ships are superior to ours? No, High Commander. I am saying their ships are different from ours, built for different purposes, with different priorities. Zexel chose his words carefully. Our vessels are elegant, efficient, optimized for performance. We achieve maximum capability with minimum resource expenditure. This is the Kalvanex way, and it has served us well for millennia. He paused, but the humans, they do not build for efficiency. They build for survival. They over-engineer their vessels deliberately, incorporating redundancy that we would consider wasteful. And in doing so, they create ships that are extraordinarily difficult to destroy. 3 antimatter strikes, Calvin said flatly. A civilian cargo hauler survived 3 direct hits from antimatter warheads. Yes, High Commander. This is troubling. Yes, High Commander. Calvin sat back, his multiple eyes focusing on the battle telemetry displayed before him. What are your recommendations, Commander Zexel? We should not engage human vessels lightly, Zexel said. Whether civilian or military, they demonstrate capabilities that exceed what their technological level would suggest. They compensate for relative simplicity with redundancy, for elegance with durability. In a protracted conflict, these qualities would make them formidable opponents. He pulled up additional data. Furthermore, their fleet response time was exceptional. From distress signal to fleet arrival 40 minutes. They mobilized an entire battle group across multiple light years in less time than our own rapid response protocols allow. This suggests either highly distributed fleet positioning or FTL capabilities we have underestimated. Your professional opinion, Commander. Could we win a war against humanity? Zexel considered the question carefully. In the short term, perhaps. Our technology is more advanced. Our tactics are well tested. Our fleet is larger. But the humans have demonstrated 2 qualities that concern me: resilience and adaptability. They do not fight the way we expect. They do not break when we expect. And they learn quickly. He thought of the Indomitable, limping through space, refusing to die. I believe a war with humanity would be far more costly than our initial assessments suggested, and I believe the outcome would be uncertain. The briefing room fell silent. For a species that had dominated their region of space for centuries, uncertainty was not something they were accustomed to facing. Then we will not have a war, Calvin decided. We will negotiate, establish clear boundaries. Reach an accommodation with these unusual beings. He studied the image of the human cargo hauler one last time, but we will do so from a position of respect, not contempt. They have earned that much. 6 weeks after the engagement, the Indomitable was ready to fly again. Maria stood in the captain's chair, new, the old one having been vented into space, and ran through the pre-flight checklist with her crew. Reactor status: online and stable, Captain. Sarah's voice was cheerful over the comm. I've got all primary and secondary systems showing green. Backups are ready, and I installed a few extra surprises in case we run into any more Kalvanex with attitude problems. I don't want to know, do I? Probably not. Maria smiled despite herself. The ship looked different now. Still recognizably the Indomitable, but sleeker, cleaner, with new hull plating covering the worst of the damage. The repair crews had done excellent work, but beneath the cosmetic improvements, the ship was the same tough, stubborn vessel it had always been. All departments report ready for departure, Park announced. Then let's fly. Marita keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands. This is the captain. We're heading out. Same route we were running 6 weeks ago, because we've got a job to do and we're not going to let anyone tell us we can't do it. The Kalvanex have backed down. The sector is confirmed as neutral space. We have the full protection of the Navy if anyone decides to cause trouble. But more importantly, we have each other. We have this ship. And we have the knowledge that we can survive anything the universe throws at us. She paused. The Indomitable isn't just a name anymore. It's a promise. We don't quit. We don't surrender. We keep flying, no matter what. And today, we're going to prove that all over again. The ship detached from the dock smoothly, engines humming with renewed power. As they cleared the station, Maria could see other ships in the pattern cargo haulers, mostly, all of them painted with fresh identification numbers but carrying the same worn, sturdy construction as her own vessel. The old designs were coming back into fashion. The over-engineered, redundant, inefficient ships that had been considered obsolete were suddenly in demand, because word had spread. The Indomitable had survived. And if she could do it, so could they. Captain, Tommy called from sensors. I'm picking up a transmission. It's from a Kalvanex vessel in the outer system. They're broadcasting on standard diplomatic channels. Maria frowned. What's the message? It's addressed to the Indomitable. It says. Tommy paused, confusion evident in his voice. It says safe travels, Captain Chen. Your vessel has our respect. Maria stared at the view screen, at the stars ahead of them, at the vast expanse of space that humanity was still learning to call home. Respect from the Kalvanex, from a species that had dismissed them as primitive newcomers just weeks ago, all because of one battered cargo hauler and a crew that refused to die. Send a response, Maria ordered. Thank them for the courtesy. And tell them she smiled. Tell them that the Indomitable will be flying these routes for a long time to come. They'd better get used to seeing us. As the ship accelerated toward the jump point, Maria felt a sense of satisfaction settle over her. They'd done something important here. Not just survived, but proven something to the galaxy. That humanity was here to stay. That they built things to last. That they didn't back down, didn't give up, didn't surrender. The universe was a harsh and unforgiving place. Space didn't care about humanity's ambitions or dreams. The vast distances between stars were hostile to life in all its forms. And out here, in the black, everything was trying to kill you. But humanity had learned to survive. To endure, to build ships that could take a beating and keep flying, to create communities that watched out for each other, to establish a presence in the galaxy that could not be easily dismissed or destroyed. The Indomitable was proof of that. A ship that should have died but didn't. A rust bucket that had survived direct hits from antimatter cannons and lived to tell the tale. And Maria Chen, captain of that ship, knew that this was just the beginning, that humanity was going to face countless more challenges as they expanded into the stars, that there would be more conflicts, more dangers, more moments where survival seemed impossible, but they would endure, they would adapt. They would build more ships like the Indomitable, ships that embodied everything humanity stood for, because that was what humans did. They refused to die. The jump point approached, and Maria gave the order. The Indomitable's FTL drive spun up. Reality began to bend around them, and they disappeared into the space between spaces, carrying their cargo and their crew and their indomitable human spirit toward whatever came next. Behind them, in the Kalvanex fleet command, Zexthal watched the human ship disappear from his senses. He thought about the engagement, about the lessons learned, about the fundamental reassessment of humanity that had resulted. Venzik approached, his sensor storks oriented respectfully. Commander, the diplomatic corps has requested our full analysis for their negotiations with the human confederacy. Provide it to them, Zexthal said. All of it. They should understand exactly what kind of species they are dealing with. Yes, Commander. Venzik hesitated. If I may ask you, you believe we will see that vessel again? Zexthal thought about Captain Chen's response, about the promise inherent in it, about a species that built ships to survive, that refused to be intimidated, that would keep flying no matter what obstacles were placed in their path. Yes, he said finally, I believe we will see her many times, and I believe we should be grateful that the humans prefer trade to war, because if they ever decide to apply that same stubborn determination to conquest, he let the thought trail off. Venzik understood. They all did now. The humans were not the primitives they had assumed. They were something far more dangerous, survivors. Daters. A species that had clawed its way to the stars through sheer determination, and now refused to be told where they could or could not go. The galaxy would have to make room for them. And watching the emptiness where the Indomitable had been, Zexthal found himself hoping that when the histories of this era were written, when scholars looked back on this moment of first real contact between Kalvanex and humanity, they would remember it as the beginning of cooperation, not conflict, because he had seen what one human cargo hauler could survive. He had no desire to learn what a human battle fleet could do. Somewhere in the space between stars, the Indomitable flew on, carrying its crew and its cargo and its legacy. A rust bucket that had refused to die. A ship that had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their firepower or their diplomatic cunning. It was their refusal to quit, ever, and the galaxy was going to have to deal with that. Maria stood at the viewport of her cabin, looking out at the swirling chaos of FTL travel. Beside her, on a small shelf she'd had installed during the repairs, sat a plaque. Simple metal engraved with plain words. The Indomitable survived 3 direct hits from antimatter cannons. Still flying, she smiled and touched the plaque gently. They'd offered her medals, commendations, a promotion to a cushy desk job with better pay and no risk. She'd turned them all down, because this ship, this crew, this life, it was what she'd been meant for. Out here, in the black, where survival was never guaranteed and every day brought new challenges, where ships were judged not by their elegance but by their ability to keep their people alive, where humanity's stubborn refusal to give up was the only thing standing between extinction and the stars. This was where she belonged. The ship shuddered slightly as they prepared to emerge from FTL, and Maria returned to the bridge. They had cargo to deliver, contracts to fulfill, promises to keep. The galaxy wasn't going to wait for them to rest on their laurels. But as the Indomitable dropped back into normal space and her crew got to work, Maria knew that they'd be ready for whatever came next, because they'd proven something important, something the galaxy needed to understand. You could knock humanity down. You could damage their ships, kill their people, throw everything you had at them. But they would keep getting back up. They would keep flying. They would never, ever surrender. And that made all the difference.